Welcome to What is Going for new thought from the edge of Each week on OMTimes' flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. When we were planning tonight's show, we had no idea quite how timely and critical its topic was going to be. It's long been known that stress is the world's #1 proxy killer disease. The American Medical Association say that it's the basic cause for more than 60% of all human illnesses and disease. With 110 million people dying every year as a direct result of stress, and the current coronavirus pandemic set to drive global stress levels even higher, it's important to know that every one of us has inbuilt access to a powerful non-pharmaceutical prescription that not only reduces stress instantly, but also lowers heart rate and blood pressure, produces potent calming neurochemicals such as oxytocin, which is otherwise known as the love hormone. With me tonight to tell us about this extraordinary self-healing tool are two well-known pioneers in the field of sound healing and harmonics, Jonathan and Andi Goldman, whose latest book, The Humming Effect, explores the latest research and evidence on sound healing for health and happiness. Jonathan Goldman, Andi Goldman, welcome.
Sandie, it's a real pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandie. We are delighted to be able to share with your audience our information that is quite important right now with all the stress that is happening. So thank you so much for having us.
And I love the way that it works out. I mean, we've been talking about this show for a couple of months, and here we are tonight, in the thick of it all right now, and it's the perfect topic to be sharing. So tell me, you've both been involved in sound healing for a number of years. I mean, you are so well known. Your books, your music, you've done it all. When did you first become aware of the powerful effects of humming?
Well, I mean, humming was probably if you think about it, almost everyone that we know has had a potent effect with humming. They just have not done it consciously and haven't been aware of it. For Andi and myself, we've been, in this field, oh my goodness, for a combined total of longer than we've actually been alive, and we're up there. So we've been here for a while, and we really know of the power of sound and music to really create very, very transformational and healing experiences for people. But the difficulty is that oftentimes when you either talk about music or sound healing, most people go, well, what they hear is you need to be a trained singer or musician, vocalist, or some sort of really person who's adept at playing an instrument or singing. And that is simply not true. So we're going, what sound can we find that will basically be something that everyone can resonate to?
And Sandie, we looked at each other as we were having this discussion, and we went, we've got to create something that the general populace could really relate to. We looked at each other and we went, how about humming?
Yeah.
That is something that we all do. We've all known how to do. And one of the things we sort of chuckle about is we've never heard anyone say, I'm just not a really good hummer. And so...
That's so true. So true. And what's interesting, I mean, whistling and humming are not something you hear people doing in the street anymore.
I know. It's really true. So we're hoping that people, as we, put more emphasis and focus on humming, that maybe we'll start hearing people humming more because it's so easy.
Yeah. Did you know that there used to be professional whistlers in Hollywood that they would hire? That there's some themes from different movies, including, for example, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. That had professional whistlers. I don't know that they had professional hummers on. That's a blessing, because before we go further, thanks to some of the really fun television shows, one which I think originated over in the UK, which then became American Idol, but brought to our attention new words like pitchy and whatnot, and we became so even more judgmental about the way people sung, and therefore we became really judgmental about the way we made sound. And I just don't know of anybody who's judgmental about how they hum.
Well, and also, Sandie, it's so interesting to me because, we're talking about a very simple sound that we can all make. And the truth of the matter is that it is actually, as we are humming, there are so many levels of healing and complexity that are literally occurring while we're humming. So we like to say that it is the most simple sound, and yet it is the most effective sound to really
most profound. Yes.
to really reduce those levels of stress that we are, that we all feel just, basically in our current culture. And it helps so much to kind of breathe out and begin to hum, and we then feel that stress almost melting away.
It's so interesting because we all know about humming. It's one of those things. It's like wallpaper. It's there in the background all the time. But we don't think about it. And reading your book and what is actually happening, in the body, the chemicals that we're releasing, etc., when we are humming, was so fascinating that, my daughter-in-law was saying, well, the kid's going to be home from school now. There's going to be a lot of stress in the household. And I said, well, I've just read this book. We're going to have humming competitions because that's the best way to relieve the stress with the kids.
Oh, I love that.
Oh, that's hilarious. Well, it's interesting, Sandie, if I can get a little scientific for just a moment. There are two major ways that sound affects us. The first is called psychoacoustics, which is that the sound goes into our ears, into our brain, affects our autonomic nervous system, our heart rate, our respiration, our brain waves, all sorts of things like that. Then the second way is called vibroacoustics. And here the sound is literally going into us on a cellular level and affecting us down to our molecules and our DNA. So both those are different ways that sound affects us. And, of course, the very, very cool thing about humming is that it is both a psychoacoustic sound. In other words, we can hear ourselves making the sound. It's going into our ears, or other people making the sound. But it's also, from our perspective, probably the most powerful vibroacoustic sound. Literally, when we teach, we basically have people really make the sound and then, first of all, become aware of where it's vibrating in their body, and then learn to project it through a series of changing our pitch and tone, and also basically focusing our attention and intention on where we want it to vibrate. And those two phenomena are extraordinary.
And we like to say that this is conscious humming. So if we have conscious humming occurring, we're very present with it, and we are able to visualize or imagine the different places in our body where we're feeling this vibration, where we're feeling this vibroacoustic energy. And so conscious humming is our buzzword here.
Right, yes, indeed.
We'll talk about the consciousness aspect of humming as we get later into the show. One of the things in your book is you've really gone into the science behind sound healing. And what's particularly interesting for me is I've just finished ghosted writing a book where I had to do the same thing and actually recommended your book and referenced it in this particular book when we were talking about sound healing. But you talk about how self-created sounds can literally rearrange molecular structure. Can you explain how that happens?
I'm not quite sure that I'll give you some thoughts, but simply put, the idea is that everything is in a state of vibration. And the beginning was the word, and we can talk about the word a little bit later.
Yes.
But the idea that the universe literally, and this is our ancient mystics and our modern quantum physicists are basically in agreement that everything is in a state of vibration. And from the chair you may be sitting in to the paper that you may be holding, to our bodies, every organ, every bone, every tissue, every part of our body is in a state of vibration. And one of the basic, shall we say, principles of using sound for healing is the idea that when something becomes out of tune, if our body is like this extraordinary orchestra playing the symphony of the self with every organ, every bone, every tissue, putting out perhaps a composite frequency that is like this wonderful orchestra playing the symphony of the self. What happens if the second violin player begins to lose their sheet music? They're playing out of tune, out of harmony. Pretty soon the rest of the string player plays out. Pretty soon the actual orchestra will play out. And this is, if you like, akin to a part of our body vibrating out of ease or out of harmony, and we say it is dis-ease. And the very simple and yet profound metaphor for this is, what if we were able to give the string player back their sheet music? What if we could somehow project the correct resonant frequency to that part of the body that was vibrating out of harmony and out of resonance with itself? And that's the basic principle of using sound as a healing modality. And then I have to defer to the New York Times. And actually, this is from February 8th, 1988. Don't ask me why. I remember seeing that. It was in the science section. It was talking about ultrasound, but that's an aspect of sound. Sound-shaped and dazzling tool can make, break, or rearrange molecular structure. That was one of the things. And I went, okay, great. So here we have science telling us that sound can rearrange molecular structure. And then the idea simply is, to try to rearrange it with frequencies that are working. So that's one aspect. And then we bring in a phenomena of stress, for example. And, stress obviously causes everything from our nervous system to who knows what it does on a cellular level, but it causes things to literally resonate out of balance and out of alignment. When we're in a state of fear, and this is so interesting, when we're, I'm jumping a bit, but that's okay. When we're in a state of fear, we, have the fight or flight principle, which is something that can also occur when we listen to really loud sounds. This is something, dealing with the phenomena of sound healing. So a lot of people go, oh, well, if sound can be healing, then more is better, louder is better, longer is better. That is not necessarily true because, for example, when you're listening to sound, music, or whatnot, if you listen to it too high, basically it causes our fight or flight mechanism to occur, and that causes stress. So, and it can be music that we really like. It doesn't matter, because here, on an example, the sound is going into our ears and into our brain and causing this release of adrenaline and stuff like that. So it's very, very important. Also, I just had to throw that in. When people get into using sound for healing modalities, listen to it at a level that is soothing and calming to you. Does that make sense?
It does indeed. And I'm wondering, is there a difference, do you think, if I wanted to do some self-healing, singing to myself versus humming to myself? Would there be any difference there?
You know, Sandie, I would like to speak to that because with humming, when we were talking about the vibroacoustic aspect of sound, that goes directly into the body at a very deep level. It's almost like we're giving ourselves an internal massage. And this is a bit different than when we are singing. Now, singing is wonderful, too. Absolutely. But we believe, and our experience has shown us, that humming goes deeper into the cellular level. So I would say that humming could be a bit more powerful, but our intention is crucial, whatever we are doing, whether we're humming or we're singing.
And just as a thought, when you're singing to yourself, it affects mostly, not 100%, but mostly our emotional body. So it's true. I mean, humming is great for calming us down, and singing is a wonderful way also of de-stressing. But once again, as Andy was saying, we think that humming has some overall gestalt or effects that are a little bit different and perhaps not better, but a little bit different. So, both are good.
That's what I mean. Both are excellent. And, just our self-created sounds are so healing. And when we have the intention of making those self-created sounds for the purpose of reducing stress, bringing in balance, and healing on, on any level, that intention makes all the difference in the world.
And I'm just going to say one more quick thing, because I know we're going to have to go to commercial soon, is the fact that most people perceive that a lot of imbalances are simply due to blocked energy. And very simply put, what if making sound in a particular area of the body sort of created a resonance, created a vibration that freed the blocked energy and allowed the healthy energy to return? Perhaps it may be also on a level, metaphorically, that simple.
Yes, and there is a lot of research to back that up. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'm speaking with award-winning musician, composer, writer, teacher, and chant master, Jonathan Goldman, and his wife and partner, licensed psychotherapist and holistic counsellor, Andi Goldman. We're talking about one of the simplest and most effective stress-reducing, self-healing tools that we all have free access to. We'll be back with more from Jonathan Goldman and Andi Goldman after the break.
The future of Internet radio is here. OMTimes Radio, IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
More than 24 million Americans have an autoimmune disorder, and that number continues to grow. I'm Sharon Saylor, and I'm one of those 24 million. To put that number in perspective, cancer affects about 9 million and heart disease up to 22 million. That's why I've brought together top experts and those thriving regardless of their diagnosis to bring you the latest, most up-to-date information. Join me, Sharon Saylor, Friday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, for the Autoimmune Hour on Life Interrupted Radio to find out how to live your life uninterrupted.
Hello, I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, host of OMTimes' flagship radio show, What Is Going On. As a long-time editor, book judge, spiritual magazine publisher and radio host, I've read thousands of books and interviewed hundreds of authors and teachers, so I know what's worth reading and what isn't. Now, with the spiritual book market growing increasingly crowded, more and more people are seeking my help in finding the authentic voices, the empowering tools, and the genuine skip the BS guidance that will make the most difference to their spiritual development. So I decided to make it easier by bringing my knowledge, experience and considerable network of contacts together in the No BS Spiritual Book Club. There are no ads, no joining fees, no obligations and no BS. Just an ever-growing library compiled by recognisable and respected names of the 10 best books that help them the most on their journeys. Plus free book excerpts, audios and live video interviews where you can quiz them about their spiritual journeys and their 10 best list choices. Your time and money are valuable, your spiritual journey even more so. If you're looking for genuine guidance from people who've walked this path before you, check out Sedgbeer.com. Click on the No BS Spiritual Book Club tab and join the club. That's Sedgbeer.com, SEDGBEER.com. I'll see you there.
I am Fidel Nsombo. I was born in a city called Bukavu in the Congo. We were a loving family, and then, boom, everything that I had disappeared in a single day. People think that when you are a refugee and they resettle you to America and all your problems are done. They don't understand that that's the beginning of everything. I was not born a refugee. I was made one.
It's time we welcome refugee families with open arms. Learn more at embracerefugees.org, brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back, Jonathan Goldman, Andi Goldman. Let's talk a little bit about the therapeutic benefits of music and of sound. There was a piece that I came across when I was doing some research that talked about cancer cells and how their cell nuclei are incapable of maintaining their structure when sound wave frequencies attack the cytoplasmic and nuclear membranes. And what was interesting for me about that particular piece of research was that when experimenters worked with the human voice and cancer cells, the cancer cells disorganized, disintegrated and exploded much more quickly than they did from music. So the voice itself, seems to have more impact than the music.
That's wonderful research, and thank you for citing it. And it's so interesting because before, I've been in this field for a long time, and before any of the research was done, I was having experiences using my voice to help people. Using a phenomenon called toning, Toning. And I would literally, if you like, be able to tone or project sound into a person, into a part of a person's body, and I would scan their body using my voice, and then I would be able to project what seemed to be the correct resonant frequency, since a harmonic would really blossom, and all of a sudden there would be this extraordinary stuff. And I had some amazing experiences with people who were really, shall we say, set to go into surgery, and all of a sudden the next day they would go in and there'd be nothing there, and even teach people how to do this. But the one thing that I just often tell people is that I say, well, they want to have testimonials, and I don't like to give personally testimonials about things, simply because I believe, Andy and I both believe, that we are really unique vibratory beings, and what works for one person simply will not work for another person. So, yet at the same time, I've had from my own personal experience, and you were citing this data, where we can literally do this. And I talked about one method of using sound as a healing modality, which is to really reinforce the, shall we say, vibrations of a healthy organ. And that's actually based upon the work of a gentleman from the UK named Dr. Peter Guy Manners, who passed away some years ago, but he was one of the great pioneers of using sound for healing. And he would work with the frequencies of the organs. Another approach, which is very, very old and almost may be very biblical in its nature, and the idea may be related to Joshua walking around the walls of Jericho with his people and chanting, and all of a sudden the walls went down, and then you have people, singing a particular tone, and a glass was shattered. And of course, there was a gentleman by the name of Royal Rife who had what is called the Rife frequencies, and he basically created these frequencies that would shatter viruses and bacteria. And so that's more along the lines of what you're talking about. And indeed, there's been research by a guy by the name of Anthony Holland at Skidmore University, and a friend of ours named Fabien Mamon in the 1980s basically blew up by cancer cells simply by exposing them to xylophone sounds. So yes.
Well, and there's been so much research done at this particular point in time, and one of the things that the first chapter of our book cites many, many different peer research, scientific validations for using sound. But what's coming up for me right now, Sandie, is, as a holistic psychotherapist and knowing that our voice can be such a powerful tool for healing, as you were just citing. And I think that oftentimes that empowerment that can happen for a person when they themselves can use their own voice to shift and change their consciousness, to shift and change whatever issue they might be working on. Someone may perhaps not be able to work with a therapist. They may have to just depend on themselves. And what a gift to know that your own voice can help you to shift and change your whatever issue might be overpowering you.
I'm just reminded of a story of a dear friend of ours named Kay Gardner, who was one of the great pioneers of sound healing, who wrote a wonderful book that is still available, although it's not being printed. It's out of print, of course, but you can still find it, called Sounding the Inner Landscape. And Kay was a good friend of ours, and she was walking in the woods one day, and she smashed her toe and broke it. And she sat there, and she claimed, and I have no reason not to believe this, that she toned and sounded into the toe and healed it. So as an example. And another friend of ours, Don Campbell, one of the reasons Don first got into toning was that he had some sort of really major imbalance, and he just lay in bed that whole day before he went in for some work, and and he toned, and it disappeared. So we have also,
Yeah, and I want to emphasize again that aspect of our consciousness and our intention, because when we couple our intention with our sound, that is where healing can really emerge. And I think it was back in the 80s, and Jonathan created a formula that is so relevant today, and it is frequency plus intent equals healing. And we really know that when we couple our intention with our sound, miracles can happen.
Yeah. I mean, it's so interesting how much information is emerging about, the power of intention. Lynn McTaggart's work, and many other people who've been involved with intention experiments, Bill Tiller, etc. And now we're also getting the same kind of research emerging with sound and harmonics and vibroacoustics, etc., as you say. I'm particularly interested, Andi, as a psychotherapist, you can speak to how, self-directed sound, self-created sound can actually influence our emotions and our consciousness. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the beautiful thing about sound is that it literally bypasses our left brain. We can talk and talk and talk and talk, which can be very therapeutic. I'm absolutely knowing of that. But when we begin to use sound to shift that intense issue that we're working on, that maybe we're not able to put words to, when we sound it bypasses the left brain and goes right into the right brain and into our emotional body. And I have had so many experiences with people where, you know, they're caught in that that black hole and they can't get out. They can't put words to it. We start making sound to it, and over time it begins to shift and change. So I am a firm believer in sounding that issue.
Do the two of you hum to each other? I mean, Jonathan's got a
yes.
deeper voice than you. So are you, you, Andy, humming to Jonathan so you get this, this higher note, and he's humming to you so that you get the lower vibration?
Well, really the truth of the matter, Sandie, is that it doesn't matter, because once again, I go back to the intention. Jonathan and I hum together every single day. And sometimes our hums will match each other. Other times, yeah, like you said, he'll be lower, I'll be higher. But you know what? It is that humming together. It's like focusing on the word together and not having any judgment about it. And that's where the healing really happens. And you do have to share this one therapeutic technique that Jonathan and I do together. We, as you know, when couples are together, they're not always in harmony. They like to be, but they're not always that way. It's just human nature. And so one of the things that we do is that when we're in that stressful, maybe we're, upset with each other about something, or there's some anger going on, one of us will say, okay, let's stop right now and let's just hum, or let's just ohm, and we'll, even when we don't feel like it, we will do it, because we've made this sort of contract way before it actually happens, way before you get into that really stressful place. And we will say, okay, give me your hands, and we're going to start humming, we're going to start ohming. And honestly, Sandie, we do that, and within 2 or 3 minutes, there is a shift in that energetic field of stress or whatever is happening. Jonathan,
so I'm simply going to say that it's so true. Just as a concept, you're going to a party, and all of a sudden you get into some sort of tiff about something that is ridiculous. And what you want to do is basically use sound, but not use sound on a positive level. You want to use sound on a negative level to berate your partner and say nasty things. But if instead you can go, okay, let's make a sound together, and all of a sudden we'll look at each other and go, or whatever. As Andy said, it's so outrageously powerful, and oftentimes it's the last thing you want to do. So you have to have made the agreement that you can do that beforehand. Otherwise, it just is not going to happen. But if you can do that, all of a sudden, you look at each other and start laughing or something, and realize how ridiculous.
It honestly happens that way every single time. But the real important key is making that agreement way before you get into that, that stressful place. Making that agreement when you're feeling really good and really loving toward each other. Hey, honey, remember, when we get into a real tiff, let's remember to tone together, ohm together, hum together. And so then when it actually happens, hopefully one person in the couple will have the wherewithal to remember that.
And that's also a great thing to do with your kids.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Or, just even a friend or whatnot. It's because it doesn't have to be a, quote, spouse or partner. It can be just anyone. But what it is you're literally beginning to retune yourselves and resonate together, because when you're in a state of anger, your energy field, your emotional body particularly, really gets out of kilter. So there's 2 really out of kilter emotional bodies, and then you use your own intentionalized, self-created sounds, and all of a sudden they just shift back into resonance together, and it's amazing.
And once again, that sound bypasses the left brain, where you're trying to figure it all out.
Yeah. One of the things I like to do when I really need to focus on writing is to play certain types of music, and I don't want words. If I have words, my brain is going to follow them. But if it's just, some really beautiful music, then it puts me in a place where I can think better. And children, a lot of autistic children, especially babies, hum to themselves, which is interesting.
Sandie, you're reading my mind, because I wanted to speak to the children, because, children are, been home from school and, with the current state of affairs, and, so often, there is just that scattered energy, because kids have got so much energy. And one of the things I want to share, this quick little anecdote. I have a good friend who has small children, and they're school age, but in the morning when she's getting them ready to go to school, when that was in session, before they walked out the door, they'd all hold hands and they'd all ohm together to really set the intention of the day. Children love sound. And I would encourage our listeners, if you have children or you're around children, to start sounding with them, even if it's humming their favorite song or having them make whatever sound is coming to them. But children love sound.
They do indeed. You're listening to What is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guests today are authors, teachers, and pioneers in the field of sound healing and harmonics, Jonathan and Andi Goldman. And we're talking about the science behind the extraordinary self-healing benefits of humming, as revealed in their book, The Humming Effect. We'll be back with more from Jonathan Goldman and Andi Goldman after the break.
The cutting edge of conscious radio, OMTimes Radio, IOM FM. Being a radio host on IOM FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Hello, I'm Lisa Berry. Join me every Monday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time for Light on Living, a chance to see new, hear different, and feel more as I shine the spotlight on all the ways to lighten the load of life's challenges. Light on Living is your link to that new way you're looking for, that new understanding that will enhance your life, and that positive connection that will support your growth. So join me, and you'll gain insight and start to see things in a new way that motivates you.
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. Jonathan Goldman, Andi Goldman. Either of you, just feel free to jump in and answer any of these questions. I'm not going to aim them specifically at either one. But in The Humming Effect, you talk about the spiritual use of humming, including its use as a sonic yoga technique. Tell me about that.
Sandie, great to bring that around to spirituality, because as Andi and I were investigating deeper and deeper the power of the hum, we saw that it was indeed a really advanced Shabd yoga technique. And Shabd yoga is actually a way of working with, if you like, inwardly self-created sounds to travel in the sound current. Now, Brahmari pranayama is simply a technique where you'll take nice deep breaths, which we do. Once again, the book progresses in such a level that we start with simply humming, and you couple this with nice deep breathing, and then we add intentionality, which is really, really important. And with Brahmari Pranayama, you do that, and then you simply block your ears. And we've had extraordinary advanced yoga teachers who have never done that, and they found it to be among the most deep and profound meditational experiences.
And we really encourage people to sort of experiment within themselves in terms of humming. The important thing, and we didn't speak to this quite enough, but I think we need to, and that is breathing, taking a nice, deep, diaphragmatic breath. That's right. Breathing from the belly, taking that nice, deep belly breath, and then allowing the hum to come out and ride on that breath. That's a very important component of conscious humming. But we do encourage people to kind of experiment, close your eyes, block your ears, try different methods of humming. That's why in our book we, like Jonathan was just saying, we go from a very beginning form of humming, all the way up to the Brahmari Pranayama, which is that advanced yogic technique of humming.
And it's, once again, very, very interesting because the physiological benefits that include different things such as the release of melatonin and nitric oxide and all that sort of stuff. When we first found out about Brahmari Pranayama, there were all these benefits, and they literally included all the stuff that were peer-reviewed, as well as some things that weren't, and some of the things that weren't simply were impossible to, at this point, research, but, activating the pineal gland or pineal gland and being helpful for the use of Alzheimer's, which we really think, one of the things that I want to talk about in a second, but I just want to mention, talking about yoga and humming, is the fact that it well may be that the Om, and since you obviously are representing the Om with OMTimes radio, the Om is actually, in certain yogic traditions, said to literally come from the hum. In the beginning was pranava, the humming of prana, and they had to give it a name, so they called it Om. That comes from Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, and it's quite an interesting phenomenon. So if you think about it, if you go or you go Om, not much difference.
Yeah. You offer a number of breathing exercises in the book, and also some online examples for people to follow.
Right. One of the things that's so helpful is, as when we are doing conscious humming, to do our conscious breathing. And something that can be helpful is to put your hands on your belly and just feel your belly go, expanding with that inhale and breathing in, and then as you're humming, that abdomen relaxes, and really consciously focusing on that. And also some of the other suggestions that we have, for instance, you might have a headache. I'm just using this as an example. And you will then focus your humming directly traveling into that area of your head where you're feeling that discomfort. But visualizing or imagining the humming going into different parts of your body can be very helpful.
Yes, and as a thought, one aspect of the physiological effects is simply, and I talked about this in my book, Healing Sound, so I didn't bring it up again in too much. And the humming effect is the vagus nerve, which is the longest nerve in the body, that it's really affected by sound. And one of the things that with humming, Sandie, it's quite amazing. Within a couple of minutes, taking some nice deep breaths, which is so mandatory, and then coupling that with a nice gentle hum, you'll find your heart rate and your blood pressure really going down, as almost on a pharmacological level, as though you're taking some sort of major product, but instead you're just simply using your own ability. So that's something we say to people, hey, if you've got a stressful moment, just find yourself a place where you can sit there and hum with your eyes closed, gently, taking nice deep breaths for a minute or two, and it's amazing how fast, how rapid, and how powerfully that calmness, that relaxation, that stress reduction occurs. It's quite profound.
On your website, you have a very passionate piece that makes really interesting reading, and you're talking about changing our consciousness. And we need to be doing it now. And given what is happening in the world right now, where we are seeing all at once, not only have we seen the effects of global warming, etc., but all these reports are suddenly emerging with coronavirus that, the canals in Venice are clear. The water is clear for the first time in decades. And the satellite images are showing there's no pollution over Italy and none over China, etc. So what we're getting right now is a lot of evidence that it's time to wake up. And at the same time, we're also getting evidence of what nature is capable of when we leave her alone to do her thing. And that piece that you wrote, I found really touching, because you're talking about how you came up with the frequency plus intent equals healing. You talk about World Sound Healing Day, which of course you're both very much involved in, and the global harmonization, that we can create with World Sound Healing Day. Do you think if we were all to get together and have one massive international humming session, we may even be able to do something about this virus?
That's always actually been before you mentioned that, that's been a great dream of mine, to have a really large number of people, perhaps biblical in perspective, humming and doing it, or making an ah sound, or making an intentionalized sound at the same time. When we do World Sound Healing Day, we found that if you just try to do one particular time, it was so difficult because it was 12 noon New York time. It's very New York-centric, and people literally, perhaps in China or in India, might have a hard time doing that. So we basically sort of staggered it and try to suggest that any time that you do it, because on a level, the concept of sound, the concept of time, and the concept of space are really both, all limitations of our not yet evolved mind. So if everything is happening simultaneously, if we could simply, within a small time, it's so interesting, because just yesterday we were sent a little thing from the fact that the Dalai Lama is, suggesting that people chant the Tarat chant, Om Taratu Taratare Svaha, to help work with this pandemic, and the Pope was having people pray at a particular time. So yes, and yes, and we are, by the time this airs, perhaps we will have manifested something like this already, or other people will, and we'll just have joined in, because, yes, with our light, our love, and our sound, we can do anything.
And the more people that consciously say, hey, I'm going to sound forth with this, with this group, or, however things are happening now, but it can be so powerful. Sandie, I loved that image of having that global humming happening specifically for the healing of our planet, and this pandemic that, is hopefully going to dissipate. We don't know when, but At any rate, yes.
Maybe
and
we
yes,
learn from it.
And
maybe
yes.
we learn from it too. Maybe we learn from it. Yes.
Absolutely.
Maybe we learn from it. Yes.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we know the power of intention. We've got the evidence, the power of humming, and the power of frequency. So put them all together, and who knows? I mean, what else is everybody going to do while they're sitting at home, not allowed to work? Hey, let's get humming.
Hey, let's all hum.
Right. I just created a little piece. It's 10 minutes long that I'm going to actually send you once we get off here. But it's available on YouTube, and it's called the Sound Health Enhancer. And it's simply something that works with a little guided meditation that creates some heart-brain coherence. And then you activate that working with an song, which is also a wonderful song that we use for World Sound Healing Day, and just simply feel the light being encoded upon yourself, because on this level we're working with a microcosm, macrocosm aspect, and it's a very nice little meditation that's up there, and it's just one of the things, the offerings that we'll be making as this goes on. I'm working on something even now as we speak. We're down in my recording studio, and it's up there on my computer waiting for me to do some finishing touches on it. So there you have that, yeah.
But I think the more we can utilize our own self-created sounds for healing, whether it's globally or personally, just is such a gift, really.
Yeah, indeed. Would you, can you direct our listeners where they can find that? Is it on your YouTube channel?
Yes, it is, and I hope if you Google, because it's just went up for days, so sometimes
I think it is up.
Yeah, it is up.
Yeah.
It's called Sound Health Enhancer, and you Google Jonathan Goldman. I've got a whole thing. It's the latest one that I've got, and I think it's very nice, and it's there for people to have. So, and I trust it'll have extraordinary beneficial things. A lot of times people don't believe stuff unless there's scientific research, and right now we just have to trust our hearts.
We have to trust our hearts. That's a beautiful, beautiful phrase, Jonathan. I like that. And I hope people will go to our YouTube channel. And also, if it's okay, I'd love to say what our website is.
Of course, go ahead.
Which is healingsounds.com, and sounds has an S at the end, and we do have a lot of information on our website, both educational and, of course, we have all of our music and sound healing tools, etc. And we invite people to visit us, and maybe it will be helpful during this time where we are at home more than we've ever been.
I mean, sound can just be an extraordinarily powerful tool for rejuvenation, for balance, for healing, for transformation, and we love the hum because it's available for everyone. But at the same time, we offer all sorts of other things as well.
The thing about sound is, I mean, it was the first thing. I mean, the Bible opens with, in the beginning was the Word. You referenced that earlier, Jonathan. Sound healing, self-created sound, was probably the first music that we ever heard. I mean, the first music that the world ever heard.
Right, and if you think about it, the first sound that comes into us is as a little, baby in utero, I think about 9 weeks. The auditory pathways, it said that the ears actually develop before the brain. And anyway, the baby in utero is sensitive, if you like, and responds to sound. And, of course, the last sense that is said to leave us when we depart is a sense of hearing. And, in fact, the Tibetan Book of the Dead is actually incorrect. It should be the Tibetan Book of Hearing in the state of the bardo, which is the in-between state between death and the next world. So that's, once again, it said that the sense of hearing is the last thing to leave us. So, wow.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's so much about sound that I just, it's a phenomenally interesting topic to me, and I'm delighted to see how medicine is really delving into that, and, all sorts of things are beginning to emerge. Jonathan Goldman, Andi Goldman, we're almost out of time. thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for the humming effect. Thank you for that piece of music. And we look forward to hearing more.
Oh, Sandie, thank you so much for having us. It has really been our delight and pleasure, and we send many blessings to you and to all of our listeners, and thank you.
Indeed, blessings of light and love through sound to everyone.
Indeed. Thank you very much. The Humming Effect, Sound Healing for Health and Happiness by Jonathan Goldman and Andi Goldman. You can find it anywhere that good books are sold, and you can go to their website at healingsounds.com, and you can learn about all of their books and their prodigious body of work. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer. You can learn more about me, my work, and the No BS Spiritual Book Club at sedgbeer.com. And in the meantime, I'll be back next week with another edition of What Is Going On. Till then, it's goodbye from me.